We all have our demons.
Not enough pain.
What is up, YouTube? It's Kale Rian back with another video. After yesterday's video talking about Diablo 3, getting kind of sad, getting kind of bummed out, admittedly, about the fate of Diablo 3, I decided to kind of sit down and think about what I would do if I were Blizzard. So I decided to put together my ideas of potential business fixes for Diablo 3. Now, some of this is going to be controversial. Some of this is going to be stuff that I personally probably wouldn't want in terms of sort of an overall game design direction. But I feel like there's an element of necessary evil in this. That is that some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be things that I'm not a big fan of. But if they meant more content for Diablo and more support for Diablo, then I could probably accept that. So let's take a look at some of the options that we have here available that could be added right onto Diablo 3 today to add on some additional content or support for the game. Now, first up, you'll notice my character has a lot of really cool visual options. I've got a transmog staff that looks like Ner'zhul's. I've got a banner from BlizzCon. I've got this flag. That's the banner. Never mind. I've got a little pet following me around. All of that comes from the collections. This actually, somewhat ironically, is something that they added to the game to kind of collect up all the stuff that was already in-game that players could already get, but also to include some purchase options. You have options to purchase, Deluxe Edition digital for Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. You can get the Standard Edition. It tells you what's there. It gives you a place in-game, much like all of Blizzard's games currently, to see what's available and to purchase some of these things. Now, the challenge here, of course, is that there's not a whole lot of additional stuff that you get access to. Most of the bonus things in here, some of these pets and the portrait frames and stuff like that, basically just require that you own certain games or that you purchase certain things or that you reach certain accomplishments within both Diablo and outside of Diablo and other Blizzard games. So there's some cool options here, but what you'll notice is that this is the start of a cosmetics tab of some sort. Now, what I'm about to say irks me to the very core of my soul. I need you to know that it's going to hurt me physically and mentally to say the sentence I'm about to say. But what if, for example, we expanded the number of cosmetic options available in the game drastically? You could get tons of limited banners based on other WoW or on other Blizzard franchises, even Activision franchises perhaps. You could get additional pets. You could get additional portrait frame customizations. And then, let's say, you introduce a loot box. Oh God. I'm sorry. I know that it sucks, right? I'm not a fan of loot boxes either. I need to be perfectly clear about that. And again, to say that what I'm trying to do with this video is to propose things that I think would get Blizzard to support Diablo 3 more, rather than things that I would like to see in Diablo 3. Because at the end of the day, what I would like to see in Diablo 3 is content. And the easiest way to get them to finance content is to have a reliable source of income for or from said content. So it burns me to say it, but if you rapidly expanded the number of available cosmetic options within Diablo 3 and then you implemented a loot box to receive some of them, not all of them, of course, you'd still have event limited ones, stuff like that, you could, in theory, increase the amount of revenue the game would generate in order to finance future content options. Oh, that hurt. Oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. But let's continue. The piecemeal expansion option is something I kind of talked about in my last video. I kind of briefly threw it out there as an idea. I do think there's some value to that. What we got with the Necromancer pack was sort of, actually in a lot of ways, one of Blizzard's few sort of dabbles in actual DLC. Other than the Nova mission packs for StarCraft 2, there hasn't really been like DLC in a Blizzard game, not in that way. It's mostly been expansions or expansion packs, or, you know, store mounts or store pets or things like that for WoW, but never really like DLC. So it's interesting to kind of see them dipping a toe into that about 10 years later than everyone else, which, you know, is especially funny when you consider they're kind of the innovators of the loot box drama with Overwatch that really is taking the world by storm. But, well, no, there were loot boxes before, don't get me wrong. But anyways, not the point. So, moving right along from that, I think that piecemealing out expansions could actually be interesting. Right now, a lot of Blizzard's models for other games like WoW predicates that you're going to purchase an expansion and get everything in it. If you buy Battle for Azeroth, you're going to have an interest in both the Horde and Alliance continents and zones. You're going to have interest in Warfronts. You're going to have an interest in all of the playable content that's offered within that box. But maybe that's not always the way it is. Like Reaper of Souls, for instance, had Act 5, but it also had the Crusader class. It also had crafting updates. It had a pretty decent amount of stuff. But let's say you didn't want to play a Crusader and you just wanted Act 5. Well, what if you could buy Act 5 for $10? Would you do that instead of buying the actual expansion? I think there's some people who might consider doing that. Similarly, if you were to move to make classes separate from expansions, what would it stop you from offering a cheaper expansion, like a $20 expansion that includes an act and you know, maybe a new mode of play or some sort of additional content, and then would offer a class separately for like $10 or $15, like the case was with the Necromancer? Or you could buy them all together in like a $30 discount bundle, or you could even buy them in like a $40 discount bundle that maybe would include a free cosmetic loot box or something. And oh god, I did it again. The problem I have with this video, I like this concept. I want to keep doing this. I'm not stopping here. This is going online. But the problem I have with this video is that I feel the need to keep explaining that I understand that what I'm telling you is that if you eat a shit sandwich first, you can get a way better treat at the very end of it. Like, I want more Diablo 3 content, but I respect that it comes at a cost. And not just a financial cost, but that may come at an additional cost of sanity, soul worthiness for ascension, various other things. So I can respect that loot boxes suck, but I can also respect a developer perspective that maybe loot boxes solve that problem. Like, if my option is that loot boxes become available in Diablo 3 and I get, you know, an Act 6 and a 10 level cap increase and a new class, like say maybe Druids from Diablo 2 or Assassins, Blizz please, you know, then maybe that's an okay trade-off. Like, I would be okay with that overall. It's not great that we live in a world where that's the trade-off, but unfortunately that's more than likely the reality of the situation. If we want some awesome, amazing new content in Diablo, or in any game really, it has to get paid for somehow. And the unfortunate reality is that oftentimes the initial retail purchase is not enough for business management types. So, there you go. So we could do loot boxes, cosmetic only, for the love of God, please. We could do piecemeal expansions, purchase by act, purchase by class, purchase the stuff you want, basically. We could do stuff like that, and there's value in that. We could have an additional approach might be microtransactions in general, those pets, those banners, things like that becoming sort of like a microtransaction model where you just buy those outright. If they do anything like that, it's probably going to be a loot box. So there you go. Outside of that, I mean, it's kind of hard to say because, like, the next thing that I'm going to say here is pretty highly speculative, but in my last video I talked about how my speculation is that Diablo 3 isn't well supported by Blizzard because it doesn't have esports tied to it. Is there a way to get esports into Diablo 3? Not in any like super serious capacity, but just enough that you could have like a preliminary event of some sort. Like, what would it actually require for Diablo 3 to have some sort of esports competition? The best thing I could think of would be to introduce something similar to Mythic Plus from WoW, but use it with Adventure Mode from Diablo 3. So imagine, if you will, like you could compete in teams, or even one-on-one, and you could have a race to see who could finish the adventure mode for a given act as quickly as possible with the same objectives and the same mob density and everything else. So, like, you're given the four seals, you're given all the same objectives and the same tuning and all that, but imagine, if you will, that you could have players race through it to see who could finish it faster. And you'd have a variety of different strategies you could employ, so it'd be like, okay, what kind of classes would you see for that? What kind of builds would you see for that? What kind of pathing would you see for that? If you know, like, for example, if it's in Act 4 and it's like Diablo is one of the objectives, would you do Diablo first to get it out of the way and give yourself some possible more time later on to do a little bit of the lower stress gameplay when you're a little more like mentally fatigued from having just engaged a boss fight? Or is it, you know, that maybe you would save Diablo for last, and maybe doing that fight would be sort of like the ultimate cap off, and you want to save as much time as possible in case you make mistakes? Like, I do think that there's probably a way to get like an esports component into Diablo. I don't fully know what it would be. The closest I can think would be something like a timed adventure mode run. So it would be run an act, both players or both teams do the same act and try to complete that within a certain amount of time. You could even perhaps introduce a modifier for difficulty or something, or maybe it could be greater rifts. Maybe you could use a fixed difficulty greater rift pattern to determine, and you know, who the best player would be by having them race through a series of greater rifts. I guess the problem with Diablo eSports, and I think this is the problem with the PvP arena they introduced that could have been in that same sort of vein, is basically that Diablo in general as a concept is not really a game that's built to be 100% balanced. Right, in a game where basically the whole franchise's PvP history is you duel people outside of town every now and then, and you either win or lose, and that's it. Right? Nobody makes calls for balance changes based on the results of a duel. Okay, I say nobody. Somebody's probably done it. But I think the problem there would be is that trying to find a balance paradigm for a game like Diablo is probably very difficult. Probably because a part of the fun is predicated on the fact that it's not necessarily built to be balanced. It's not a situation like World of Warcraft where you have, you know, 4 or 5 different tank classes that are all filling the same role and need to be equally capable of doing that role, with variations in terms of overall utility or other aspects to make them feel unique, right? So, where in WoW, that's kind of an expected part of the package, in Diablo 3, it's quite the opposite, actually. Like, it's kind of built in such a way that every now and then stuff just isn't balanced. Some of the classes are inherently more survivable than other ones. Crusaders can be especially hard to kill. Barbarians can take a lot of damage, but can also do way more damage than other people. Sorceresses, or wizards, I believe it is in Diablo 3. That's how long it's been since I played mine. You know, likewise, they don't survive very well in stand-up fights for the most part, but they do immense damage at range, and they have a lot of ability to kind of be evasive and play that way. So it's just interesting to me to think about the ways in which you could solve that problem. But the big three off the top of my head would be some sort of esport mode that uses Mythic Dungeon-like ideas from WoW in terms of like making it a timed run, making it equal, and just seeing who can do the best. The aforementioned loot boxes that I dread with every fiber of my being. And then lastly, the idea of piecemealing out expansions. I'd be very curious to see what everyone else thinks. Be sure to leave a comment below if you have any ideas for how we can get Blizzard on board with more Diablo content, because I'd love to see some more. Or if you just want to tell me the good word of loot boxes, or the bad word of loot boxes, or call me names for even suggesting loot boxes. I expect and recommend any of those responses depending on how you feel about the video. But that'll do it for this video. So if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. In the info box, I've got links to all of my various enterprises. I am on Twitch 6 nights a week, Monday through Saturday, at twitch.tv/KaleRien. I have a WordPress blog for my thoughts about WoW, MMOs, and video games in general at kalerien.wordpress.com. And lastly, I've got short form quips and other various content on Twitter at KaleRien. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take care, and I'll see you then.
Thank you.